Welcome to On Texas Football's Saturday morning conversation. I'm Bobby Burton here with Tony Barnhart. A lot of you guys will know him from his work formerly on ESPN, College Game Day, Mr. College Football. Tony, you've been around the block a time or two, my man. It is good to see you and have you here on this Saturday morning conversation.
Well, I appreciate it. Welcome to the SEC. It's nice to have all my Longhorn friends. We got a lot of good Texas friends, and but it's good to have you. And it's going to be fun. It's good. I told a group the other night, Bobby. I said I'm not going to promise you that it's going to be the best college football season we've seen, but I do promise you that it'll be the most interesting college football season we've seen, and that's kind of where we are.
I just real quick, I want to do this for you. Tony works with TMG College Sports these days. You can find him. It's part of the Athlon Sports Network. We'll also talk a little bit about a book that he just had come out, The 19 of Green, which is a personal journey of Tony's that I think is kind of interesting. But let's talk a little bit about Texas, Oklahoma, the SEC, all this new. It's a new age, a new dawn. Texas had its SEC celebration, joining the SEC officially on July 1, just last Sunday, as a matter of fact, Tony. As you look back on it, what are your thoughts on where and what this entrance to the SEC of Texas and Oklahoma means to the conference and how you see it? I mean, you're at some level a college football historian and can put it in proper context for us.
Well, what you've done, we've seen college realignment, we've seen expansion, we've seen all this stuff, and we've seen the difficult part of it, which is Stanford joining the Atlantic Coast Conference. So those who are geographically challenged, but the thing about Texas and Oklahoma joining the SEC, it always made sense. I've been told for a lot of years that the SEC is not even thinking about expanding again. And there was always, unless Texas and Oklahoma decide they've had enough and want to get in another conference. And ultimately, that's what happened. It's a fit. Commissioner Greg Sankey will tell you it's 16 schools in 11 contiguous states, and that means a lot. But the main thing is you're adding two of the best brand names of all time in not only football, but all sports, that makes the SEC, which was the best league anyway, makes it even stronger. So I think everybody's looking forward to it. I've got a bunch of friends who are going to be in Austin later this year. And I can't tell you how excited they are. They've been calling me for restaurant tips. And I said, you'll be fine.
Just go for the barbecue.
You don't have to find the party in Austin. It'll find you. So
good stuff. We talk about this, Tony, and where Texas will fit on the pecking order of the SEC. One of the things that I find that's interesting about the SEC is its overall competitiveness of the league. Now, they can be top heavy at times historically. Alabama now in that has been that way since Nick Saban. Then you have Kirby Smart has put Georgia in that category clearly. Mm-hmm. LSU has kind of dipped in and out. Florida over the years has dipped in and out of that. Can Texas be one of those teams that is in that upper tier in your opinion? Or is it just the fate of who your quarterback is and who your coach is at that time? Because the SEC is not a very forgiving conference in that regard.
No, that's exactly right. But first, to your first question, there's no question that Texas will belong in that upper tier. And their fans will expect to be in that upper tier. However you want to divide it, Texas is supposed to be there. The thing that coaches find out, and I do this with every coach that comes in the league, after their first year, I say, what surprised you? What did you learn about being in the league? And I remember one coach sitting in his office and him saying, the SEC, first of all, is a line of scrimmage league. Okay. You can do, at the end of the day, it's a line of scrimmage league. One other thing it's also a depth league. It's got a league where you get into November and you need depth, and the SEC, the teams that win the championships are the ones that have the depth, and that's an awfully big part of it. So anyway, yeah, I think fans, I expect Texas to be in that upper tier because they've got. You look around, do you have everything that you need? Do you have the fan base? Do you have the money? Do you have the recruiting base? Do you have and Texas has all of those things. There's nothing that Texas needs that they don't have. So I expect them to be very much a part of the top half of this league.
It's interesting to me because I've watched the SEC not from afar. I've been to many games, covered the recruits in that conference for decades. I like the concept of line of scrimmage league there because when you go to a Big 12 game, you might have one defensive lineman on the other team that's going to be an NFL player. When you go to play even a Kentucky, okay, you're going to have 3 defensive linemen that are going to be in the NFL. And so there was a time for Texas over the last 15 years, really, Tony, where it wasn't the defensive line that Texas was hurting on. They've got plenty of defensive linemen in the NFL right now. It's their own offensive line that has been the bugaboo. And one of the very first things that Steve Sarkisian did when he when he got to Texas was put this focus on what he calls big humans, right? Mm-hmm. And Kyle Flood came to Texas from Alabama with Steve Sarkisian, and they've done a good job now on the offensive line to be able to handle that. But it still doesn't mean they're not going to lose their fair share of battles because they're playing other NFL-ready players, right? And take me through this and your thoughts on just the overall situation of the league currently. Georgia probably sits atop of it, right?
Right.
Who are some other teams that you kind of think and where they fit in the fabric of it all right now?
Well, one thing to address a point that you just made is one of the things that makes playing in the SEC really difficult. Can Texas beat Alabama on a given day? Yes. Can Texas beat Georgia on a given day? Absolutely. What makes it tough is that you play Georgia and then you play LSU and then you play Texas A&M and then you got Ole Miss and it's the cumulative effect of having to go through this gauntlet. So that's a big part of it. But yeah, there's no question that Georgia's going to be not only number one in the SEC, they'll be number one in a lot of preseason polls because even though they lost a lot of talent, they replaced it with, as Kirby Smart told a group of us, he says, we lost a lot of really good players. But you know what? We're replacing those guys with a lot of really good players. And that is a big key. But Georgia will be there. And the thing about it is, after that, we're not sure. I think Texas will probably be second when all is said and done. LSU will have another great offense, and if they can improve that much on defense, they'll be there. Ole Miss should be good on paper, given what they did in the transfer portal. They may have the best wide receiver room in the country. Obviously, with Jackson Dart coming back as quarterback, they should be there, and they've got the kind of schedule. But it's there's a bunch of teams in this league that you don't know. I think Texas and Georgia will be 1 and 2. I think when we get to Dallas and SEC media days. Yeah,
I would ask you this: Texas plays a couple teams that a lot of Texas fans are not familiar with, and I just want to get your take on them.
Mm-hmm.
Because they know about Georgia. I mean, we've watched everybody that watches college football, and this is a podcast that has some really ardent college football fans. So you're not speaking to the average college football fan, right?
Right.
Texas plays a couple of SEC teams that I don't know that Texas fans know what to think of. And that's Kentucky and Mississippi State.
Right.
What are your takes on those two teams? I just want to, because we talk about Georgia, we know them, we know Florida even to a degree, but Mississippi State and Kentucky.
Well, let's start with Kentucky, where Mark Stoops is entering his 12th year. That in itself is an amazing accomplishment because nobody's been there 12 years. He's won more games, been there longer than Bear Bryant was there. Okay. His first 2 seasons, he went 0-8 and 2-6 in the SEC, and they wanted to run him out of town. But what happened was the athletic director, Mitch Barnhart, no relation, says, no, we're not only are we going to keep Mark Stoops, we're going to double down. We're going to invest $120 million into our stadium to upgrade it. We're going to build a $50 million practice and office complex that'll be as good as anybody's in the country. And they doubled down, and now they've been to bowls 5 out of the last 6 years. What he has done has been, what Mark Stoops has done has been tremendous. I think he flirted with Texas A&M a little bit last year, but and they expect to have another bowl team. So I think he's done a tremendous job. And you got to put it into context, Bobby. It's Kentucky, okay? And to do what he's done at Kentucky has been pretty remarkable. Mississippi State is in a transition year because when Mike Leach suddenly passed away, they had a decision to make to stick with the Mike Leach offense or they went with Zach Arnett, the defensive coordinator, made him head coach, and Arnett tried to remake Mississippi State into something it wasn't, and it didn't work. So that's why they bring in Jeff Levy, who has worked with Gus. He's worked with Malzahn. He knows offense, and so they're going through a transition, and we'll see how that works. But they will be. I just think Jeff Levy's a really good football coach, and I don't know how far in the rebuild they're going to get this year, but they're going to be a well-coached team that can throw the football.
Yeah, Levy has not only the tie to Gus Malzahn, he's also Art Briles' son-in-law.
Right.
And so he's got a couple of different influences there. And he was leading Oklahoma's offense last year that moved the ball up and down the field pretty easily on Texas. So I think Texas fans are familiar with his offense. They don't know what I think is interesting on both Kentucky and Mississippi State. The level of talent there is higher than, say, the level of, or is as high as, if not higher than, a Kansas State,
right?
For example, that traditionally gave Texas problems. Texas handled them most of the last decade, but the point being, they're more talented, and I think that little twist is what may be interesting for Texas folks as well. All right, you mentioned the line of scrimmage lead, the depth, all of that stuff, Tony. We're going to the SEC Media Days in a couple of weeks. I hope I'll see you there. What do you think the SEC Media Days has in store for me? I was blown away by the spring meetings in Destin. The Big 12 never had anything like that. It was, but the spring meetings. What is the SEC Media Days like in your opinion? What's it got in store for me?
Well, think about this, Bobby. 4 days of wall-to-wall football. Every coach comes in. Every coach brings 3 players, and they have a logistical, it's an incredible job of what they do to get all the coaches interviewed. There's always a main media room where the coach, if you've never been there for the first time, it can be a little daunting for coaches because it is different. There's a lot of over 1,000 media people will be there, and again we wanted to have it in Dallas this year, so to make you feel welcome. So we didn't put it in Birmingham, which we could have done, and they could have put it in Birmingham in the grand ballroom there. But there's a great history of coaches talking in that media room, and a lot of history gets made. Like the year that Philip Fulmer was subpoenaed to testify in a trial. He didn't show up and did it by speakerphone. And that was an incredible deal. Or the year that Nick Saban was talking to the media, and his dog got out of his hotel room and he ran down and interrupted Nick Saban's thing. There's all kind of neat things that happen, but it is literally 4 days of wall-to-wall football, talking to players and coaches, and then when it's over, it's time to go.
One last question: coaches on the hot seat in the SEC this year. The first name that comes to mind for us, we're in Texas, but for us is Florida and Billy Napier, because the first 2 seasons have not been ideal. Has he got a chance to turn the corner in Gainesville this year, or is it just look like he may be he's a guy that could be coach or that is coaching for his job, period, and unlikely with that difficult schedule to get out from underneath it. What do you think?
Everybody knows the schedule. I mean, any schedule that starts with Miami and ends with Florida State, that doesn't even count the conference games. And the last 5 games they play is just it's absolutely ridiculous. The last 5 games they play, just so people know, the last 5 games that Florida plays are Georgia, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, and Florida State. How about that? But to answer your question, there's a lot of people I talk to who think the talent is there for them to turn the corner, but let's have no illusions. Florida can be a lot better football team, and they're not going to win 8 or 9 games. They're just not. The question is, do they improve? They have their quarterback of the future, and Gasway, I think his name is, but Graham Mertz from Wisconsin came in, had a good year, completed like 70% of his passes, very few interceptions. So that they're going to be there, but this is a survival year for him. He's got to get through this year, and if he gets through this year, I think he's going to be okay.
What do you think of Steve Sarkisian? You've had some interaction with him, obviously.
Yep.
At Alabama in particular. What are your thoughts for Texas folks on Steve Sarkisian?
I thought it was a great hire when Texas made it. I said that you talk about a guy, because he's got the background. He's an offensive genius. We know that, but he's also got the background of having worked with Saban and had Saban, put some of his magical dust on him and learn about organization, learn about defense, learn about all those things. And so I thought, and they're going to recruit. Heck, I can recruit Texas. Okay? Are you kidding me? It's just, you got so many great players. So, and for them to get in the playoffs last year as they go into the conference, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. All I know is all of my Georgia fans, all my Georgia folks, they are excited about going to Austin, man. They really are. And I said, great, it'll be fun. And no, I don't have any hotel rooms, and no, I don't have any tickets. And no, there's nothing I can do about the Formula One race. I'm sorry, nothing I can do.
I'm so glad you knew about the Formula One race that weekend, because I was like, I don't think Greg Sankey and these schedulers put that in there, but it's going to be an expensive ticket and expensive hotel rooms if you're trying to make it to Austin for Texas versus Georgia, because the Formula One is in town in Austin over at the Circuit of Americas. Before I want to talk to you about the 19 of Green in a second here, Tony, which is your new book. I want to ask you one final thing. Any big, bold predictions heading into the 2024 football season with Texas OU coming in, everything that's going on in college football right now? Just big, bold predictions in general.
Well, I just think the 2 major stories in college football this year are, A, what's going to happen in Tuscaloosa, because the bar is set so high to have the first time in 17 years Nick Saban's not here and not coaching a team in this league. So how is that going to work? I was very impressed. I had a chance to spend a little time with Kalen DeBoer when we were in Destin. I was very impressed with him as a guy who's very comfortable in his own skin. So it's going to be interesting to see exactly what happened, because if they lose the game, which they probably will, because the league's so tough, but we will see. That and the 12-team playoff are the 2 biggest stories in college football, because the 12-team playoff will change the way that we look at this entire season. Let's just say that Alabama plays Georgia on September 28th in Tuscaloosa. If Georgia were to lose that game, which is certainly possible, you're still going to get in the playoffs if you were to win the rest of them. But then, of course, you got to go to Ole Miss, you got to go to Alabama, you got to go to Texas, and so we'll see. But it will completely change the way we look at the conference, the way we look at the season. Because when we get to November, normal with a 14 playoff, normally we're talking about 7, 8 schools that are legitimately even in that conversation. With 12-team playoff, you're talking about everybody who's 10-2's got a shot. Okay. And so now you're looking at 15, 20 teams that are in the conversation, and that's going to make November and Championship Saturday a lot of fun.
I got to say this. I think some teams that are 9-3 in the SEC are going to get in.
Well, trust me, Bobby. Behind the scenes, they're already making that case. I'm telling you, they're already making that case right now. That hey, our 9-3 is better than a lot of 11-1s.
Yeah, and they should. I mean, you look at the college baseball; they had 11 teams go to the College World Series or the College Baseball Playoffs. End up with 3 of the top 4 in the country in the College World Series. All right, Tony, tell us a little bit, if you would, do us a favor. Talk about your latest book, The 19 of Green. I know it's a little bit of a passion project for you, very personal story as well. Give folks a little hand. I've got a screenshot here of it of the cover up on the screen right now.
Well, I appreciate that, Bobby. This was in the fall of 1970, roughly 700 years ago. I played on the first integrated football team in the history of my high school. I grew up in a small town in Georgia, about an hour from Atlanta. And in the fall of 1970, the courts finally ruled that the school, in our little town, we had a white high school and a black high school. And the courts finally ruled that those 2 schools would merge completely, because, as you know, no merger is official until the football team gets merged. Okay, that is your body, and so it's about the merger of those 2 schools. And when spring practice was over, we thought we were going to have 60 or 70 guys. We ended up with 19. That's where the title comes from, the 19 of Greene County High School. And with 19 guys, we went to war. Lost our first 2. We thought it was going to fall apart, and it didn't. We won 7 out of our last 8 to play for the region championship. But the book, again, there were 19 guys, 12 white, 7 black. But it's not about football, Bobby. It's about the fact that 52 years after we played our last game together, we had a collective book signing last December. All the living players came. There are 15 living players. 9 of them were able to be there, and everybody got to sign books. We had a long mass signing table for every guy who was there. And 52 years later, Charles Turner, our black quarterback, remains one of my very, very best friends. We talk at least 2 or 3 times a month. But it's about that and how all of us coming from different backgrounds adjusted. And hopefully there's some lessons that I know there were lessons that I learned is that we've come a long way in race relations, but we still got a long way to go.
Tony, I think that sports can be a metaphor for life in many ways, and not only a metaphor, but an entry point for those discussions and things to happen. And so it's one of the things that brings us all together for times like this. And really appreciate you making the time this morning for the Saturday morning conversation. Tony Barnhart, Mr. College Football. Again, check him out on TMG College Sports over on the Athlons Network. He's also get his book as well. Tony, I appreciate you, bud, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks, hopefully up in Dallas at the SEC Media Days.
All right, Bobby, we'll see you in Dallas, man. Thanks.
Take care of yourself, Tony.
You bet.